Episode of the Idea Factory podcast and now videocast. And I'm very excited to have Stan Slap here as our guest. Stan, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So we're inviting all kinds of innovators and big thinkers, of which you certainly are one, and we're doing these topic areas, and a lot of them are driven by the articles I'm writing, and you were the perfect person to go to for this particular topic. So, I know you do a lot of consulting to major companies about, culture and branding and positioning. And, today I want to talk a little bit about the inner part of that, which is the corporate culture component. I was an innovation guy for a long time, implemented innovation programs of Fortune 500 companies, and that is an experience. You're dragging a lot of, in some cases, great people come along with you for the ride, but there's also a lot of bodies you have to drag with you. I don't know if you've observed the same thing.
Well, I have with companies that don't understand how a culture works and how to work it, which is most companies. Yeah, you're basically going to drag probably the entire employee and manager populations with you. Yeah.
Well, and also I think a lot of companies, even if they're great at what they do, they're not really built for change. They're built to run an engine that exists. So if you are brought in to do change or do things that are new to the business, that's where you start running into friction, and you're kind of treated as an antibody to the organization, and they try to fight you off like a virus.
Well, and that's true, and also most companies really don't have an appetite for innovation. If they say they want everything to be new, it means we want everything to be new as long as nothing has to change.
That's right.
And managers, you eat from a magic plate, because it doesn't matter how much you swallow, nothing will ever disappear. And so whatever we're asking you to do, nothing is coming off your plate to make room for that.
That's right.
These companies that are the most obsessed with performance and competency, that hold down the highest regard, rarely slow down long enough for either to develop.
Yeah, I've noticed, when we went through this technology resource allocation process, which just just the combination of those words makes me want to cry. But
doesn't it seem like somebody should be snapping a glove before they do that with you?
As excruciating as it is to say, it was more excruciating to do. Oof. And that's where, all the groups throw all their projects into a pool and everyone ranks theirs as top priority. So now, some poor bastard in technology's got to sift through it and find out the truth. Is this a top priority? Why haven't we done this in the last 10 years that it's been a top priority? What's that?
I was just saying, many years ago, Polaroid asked us to come in and work with them on some strategic projects. This is 20 years ago. And the caution from one of their senior people before we went in is, don't let your project get polarized. I said, what does that mean? They said, well, that's our term for when strategic initiatives don't work, we have a committee that investigates why they don't work. That committee then forwards their recommendations to another committee who looks at that, and then there's the senior committee that examines the recommendations from all. My brain is not big enough to make this up. This is like, so they said, just don't get in that loop and you should be fine. I said, so change nothing. They said, great. How they do it now? How they doing now, Polaroid?
This is the amazing thing. I would guess that there's at least at any given time 40 to 60% of people at a corporation that would have trouble explaining what their jobs are, or certainly connecting what their job description is to what the company does and how it makes money.
And the other 40% probably don't care. So
that's probably true too. What I want to focus on today is more the psychology of the people inside the company. So I
Right.
kind of, through my travels, I was a consultant at Anderson for a long time before I went into corporate, and so I've seen companies both from the outside in and then from the inside out, and I've observed certain things and certain characteristics of the people inside the companies, and I'm just curious to see if you've observed the same things, and then what your thoughts are on how to motivate these different types of people and what messages get through or don't get through to the different types. So let me kind of give my hypothesis, and
Excellent.
you can give me your thoughts. So when everyone starts out, I call them patsies because they really don't know anything. They're tabula rasa, blank slate. And they come in with, youthful optimism and, eager to learn and do almost anything. And I've sat in very inane meetings with them because they'll give you this whole, why, the thing that comes to mind, why diversity is so important. And then they'll go through this thing where everyone needs to be diverse and it's great for the corporation. Everyone thinks differently. And then eventually they get to a point where, what are the quotas of Hispanics, females, and so whatever the groups are. So you started out talking about diversity of thinking, and somehow we ended up at quotas. So either you're not that bright, or you think I'm not that bright, or you just don't know enough to ask those questions. So in those situations, I kind of say, look, I'll cut you some slack. You're new. You're optimistic, and we'll. I mean, does that resonate? I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
that.
I just love that's pretty much the onboarding system of a lot of companies. Listen, you're new, you're optimistic.
Yeah,
Great, that's it. Okay,
well,
get to work.
we'll beat you down at some point, but for now, we're going to use that vigor. So then I see kind of a forking in the road. So the forking happens into two major groups. There's the believers, and then there are the I call them the skeptics, or maybe the realists is a better term for it. But the believers are people who buy into the cultural message. They truly believe and want to live it, and those break into three categories themselves. So the believers end up with these alphas who love the corporate game. They love either that corporation or what it affords them in terms of self-worth, in terms of money, in terms of whatever else that they find valuable, and they just excel at everything, and they end up running divisions or the company itself. The next level down is the what I would call the survivor. So they're good. They'll get to a middle management position, but they know how to work the system and manipulate things. So they get a promotion, they get a bonus. So they know how to manipulate within the company. And then there's the soldiers who may not have the talent that the other two have, but certainly buy into it and will mobilize people to do what needs to get done. The other fork in the road, which is the realists, you have the performers. So people are really good, but kind of have a good sense of humor about where things are going, and they don't buy into the rah-rah thing, but they're really smart, really capable, they do the job, but they may not necessarily make it to the top levels that the alphas would on the believer side. Then you have sort of these heretics, which are they could end up as, they could leave the company and end up as the next Richard Branson. They could stay in the company and get beaten down, or they can truly change the company in some cases, or they might end up quitting and working phone support somewhere just because they couldn't take corporate anymore. So there are these wild cards. And then there's the 9-to-5ers, which is a big population, and they're kind of, look, I know what needs to get done to finish the job, but ultimately my family is what matters, or my hobbies are what matters, or my boats or my cars, whatever that they enjoy doing. They just want to get out at a decent hour, and they don't want you to get in the way. So if you ask them for a favor to do something outside of their their time zone or comfort zone, don't expect much. So that's kind of how I saw it, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that breakdown.
Well, I think the reason that there'd even be that strata of engagement from cultures inside a company is that most companies misperceive intellectual engagement for emotional engagement. And it's the emotional engagement that's critical. So take a typical strategic rollout or some engagement survey where everybody we say, so here's our go-to-market strategy and here's our product set. What do you think? Everybody goes, that's great. That's great. I totally get that. I believe in that. That may be. All they're saying is it's a smart idea. All they're saying is it makes sense as a product set. For a culture to say we're actually going to do our part to make this successful, you move from intellectual engagement to emotional engagement. And I'm not talking about emotion as soft stuff. Only in business would we ever have to put that disclaimer. Like, emotion? Come on. Wait, no. Come back. Emotion in the human brain is a highly rational process. It's capable of producing wonderfully irrational responses like love and support. But the opposite of emotional is not rational. The opposite of emotional is detached. And most managers and employees in a culture operate with a pretty high level of detachment. And it's not because they are born detached. It's because circumstances in the company have caused them to be detached. A culture is the most rational organism in the world. A culture, manager culture, employee culture, customer culture, a culture is agnostic, it's objective, it's an open system, but it's not, the difference between compliance and defiance from a culture, because a culture will give you whatever you want, it all rests in you knowing what the culture wants. And most companies, it is startlingly a competence that most companies and the people manage them just simply don't have. No matter how smart they are at other things, how a culture works and how to work it is just a missing competency, and it's the key to everything.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, I have a process called the 4 C's of innovation, and one of the C's is culture. So a lot of people think that, innovation is about coming up with great products or services or ideas. That's a tiny fraction of it. The major thing that'll make something succeed or fail is the culture of the organization. And a lot of times that culture fights change with incredible ferocity. So what have you found that might work to get those people who aren't built for change, or basically are saying, listen, don't screw it up for me. Whatever you do, just don't mess it up because I've got a good thing going.
Well,
so how do you address that?
Well, there are probably some people, human beings that become employees and become managers are fully formed human beings, for better or worse, by the time they join the enterprise. So if they've been dropped on their head a lot as a little kid and learned to fear, anything that says we're going to pick you up, it's like, oh my God, then you may not be able to directly impact that, but the capacity to give to the enterprise what the enterprise wants is latent in every manager and every employee culture. But the problem is that companies expect the employee culture to understand the business logic. It's not up to the employee culture to understand the business logic. It's up to the business to understand the employee culture's logic, how and why a culture works. So a culture exists to protect itself. That's why it comes into being when a group of people share the same basic lifestyle, environment, and circumstances and living conditions, they band together to share the beliefs about how best to survive. So a culture is concerned about its survival and emotional prosperity, and that's why it exists to do this. So it's an information gathering organism designed to assure its own survival and emotional prosperity. And that means neither business logic nor management authority, competitive urgency will ever convince an employee culture to adopt a corporate cause as if it were its own. In that killing field between company concept and employee commitment lays many a failed strategic plan. You want the culture to buy it, you have to know how to sell it to them. And that's where the mystery begins for most companies, is how do you do that? And so there becomes this belief about the culture that manager and employee cultures are somehow genetically impaired. They couldn't give you the commitment and productivity and loyalty you want as the enterprise if their lives depend on it. That's not true. There's no natural limiter to a culture. A culture, again, will give you whatever you want. You just have to give it what it wants first. And so to understand that is the tricky part for a culture. When we're talking about managers and employees and even customers as a culture, we're not talking about a bunch of managers, employees, and customers. When they form together as a culture, they are far more self-protective. they are far more intelligent, and they're far more resistant to standard methods of corporate influence. So you could say, I'm going to wrap this up and then get your other questions, but you could say, well, listen, if a culture exists to protect itself and its concerns are, how do I survive in this environment? And knowing I'm going to be okay, how do I get rewarded emotionally and avoid punishment? Okay, I'm going to speak very slowly to you employees now. Make the company successful. There's a good chance you're going to survive, and we'll tell you you're doing a great job. Well, that logic only works if there's a dependable through line in the culture's perceptions that what's good for the company is good for them. And chances are that there's dirt in that machine, and the culture's got all its own logic and all its own perceptions that are very well founded to say that's not true. And as long as that's not true, you're just off. And you get to something like change. Management is always frustrated about the seeming reluctance of an employee culture to embrace change. How many senior management meetings have you been in? A bunch of the C-suite sitting around and saying, well, we don't have a problem with change. Must be why we're senior management. Well, let's face it, see, change is a whole lot easier to deal with if you invented the damn change yourself. And if it's not going to happen until you're ready for it to happen. And if when it does happen, you have a bunch of resources to throw at that change to make it happen. Change to an employee culture, even good change, represents a strike at the heart of what the culture is all about. A culture exists to protect the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity. Any change screws with the known rules of survival and emotional prosperity. So it's not that the culture hates change, it hates the loss that change represents, the loss of the known. So my long-winded way of answering your question specifically, if you want to do one thing as management, one thing to help calm the culture's concerns about change, it's, and this is going to sound very simple, but in the constant drive to be bigger, faster, better, more, it's something the enterprise just doesn't do. In the middle of explaining what is changing to your people, you must also take the time to explain what isn't changing. So, yes, this is new, this is different, but here's who we still are. Here's who we have always been, here's who we will always be.
But that's once change has already been decided upon. What I'm talking about is a little bit before that, which is, you know, how do you initiate that change? So you know, just to get very tactical, you know, you've got in some cases groups that are doing new things. They're fighting for resources. Those new things aren't necessarily proven. They're in meetings where they have to defend their little business with, you know, against people who have budgets that are bigger than the revenues of their business. So you have this you know, dichotomy where you've got super empowered people within the organization, and they've got resources and historical inertia, and then you've got the upstarts which, you know, have to convince management, which is often risk averse, that these things are worth trying or doing. So in that convincing process, what do you think works and what doesn't work? What are the tools or tactics you can take to help that along?
I think you have to make the business case as well as the emotional case for anything you're asking. There has to be some sense of self you take from our ability to innovate and our ability to be competitively agile and all the things that go into that. That's the emotional case, and then you have to put it in metrics that the company already engages in observing. Managers, employees, let's just take a manager culture as an example. Managers have a gun to their head all the time. Perform. Developed a feral survival sense. They may not be doing what they think they should be doing, what's best for the company to do, what they want to be doing. They are damn well doing what they think is going to get the gun away from their head the fastest. So even if you make, if you say in order to innovate, people really need to bring that emotional engagement to work, and that's got to be a safe and reasonable proposition to people, and then they've got to be given the tools. But this latent ability to explore and to innovate is in everybody. We just have to let it loose. That's just not going to happen unless that gun is away from their head. So it's really making innovation a feasible prospect. But I would say that you don't want the entire organization to be bent on innovation. I mean, somebody's actually got to get the stuff done at some
Yeah.
point. That's like
Yeah.
saying, when we have companies all the time that say, you know, we need our cultures to be more accountable. Can you fix that? And we say, by accountable, what do you, and then they say, we want them to be entrepreneurial. Okay, listen, sport. All right, first of all, entrepreneurs do entrepreneurial things. They don't
Yeah.
work in multi-billion
That's
dollar
right.
companies
That's
where
right.
they have to fill out Form 51Z to get a budget. And entrepreneurs, are you sure you want entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurs are people that will take sticks, twigs, and mud, and just with the power of their own drive and vision, build it into an empire single-handedly. And then because they're bored, they will single-handedly take that empire and reduce it to twigs and mud. That's like saying, you know, we live in a log cabin, we need a pet. Why don't we get a couple of termites? You know, just a couple for breeding stock. You know, it's like, you don't want entrepreneurs. That's
Yeah.
the last thing you want. You want people to act like entrepreneurs, maybe show that kind of initiative, but they don't all have to innovate. They just have to take their part of the innovation, I believe,
Yeah.
and help move it down the road.
Yeah, and there's innovation roles within the spectrum. So not everyone has to be the visionary. Not everyone has to be this, hard charging, stepping on toes kind of person. I think you need a combination. You need the analytical thinker to evaluate it. You need the operator to get it through the corporate machine. You need people who don't mind filling out
Yeah.
the Form 15Z. But it's not a straightforward one man. Entrepreneurs are a different breed, and I actually have explained what you just did in a slightly different way to people, where I said, when you're dealing with a corporation, you're dealing with a population that has self-selected into security. So they're people who made that choice for a reason. They didn't choose to go start their own company. They chose to work their way through an organization. They like the protection, they like the safety, maybe they like the camaraderie, maybe they like the 401k, whatever it is that they like. They've chosen a very different path, a structured one, to compared to an unstructured one. So already you're starting out with a cultural deficiency just walking into the room.
That's true, but I still believe that potential for innovation can be tapped as
Yeah.
needed by the enterprise. In some cases, the enterprise, there are very few companies that actually base their entire value proposition and relevance around constant innovation. That is a bruising company. It's exhausting to try for Apple to always try and be Apple. And that would be the same thing as a Walmart and their distribution system and a control of margins. Not every company can do that.
Yeah.
But there are all kinds of ways you can innovate around cost control and expense reduction in a company. You can innovate around a lot of non-sexy things. The key still is whether the employee culture, and I'm talking manager and employees, even though they're separate cultures, is if they have that emotional engagement and they want to protect the company. Listen, I don't know any way of saying this without it sounding like an ad. Okay, my first book.
Oh God! Ring a bell next time you do that or something.
That's right. Anyway, it's all about how to get emotional commitment from a manager culture.
Yeah.
And one of the things I say in there is the new truth for this is that company cannot always be the first cause. Manager's ability to practice true fulfillment within the company also has to be a cause. That's not licensing chaos, that's ensuring control. There's no better way for the company to become the cause than by not always insisting on being the cause. And companies, because they're not really tapping cultural commitment, so they don't really get the dependable innovation, they have to ask for it. They have to bribe it. They have to bully you. They have to push you. They have to insist on it. They have to give you t-shirts that say innovation on it. And because the corporate organism is insecure constantly because it's not naturally getting that kind of commitment, then all of these things that should be natural in an enterprise where people care about the success of the enterprise or they're part of the enterprise have to be forced. They have to be presented as intellectual arguments. That's like, have you ever tried to convince somebody of all the reasons that they should love you? Listen, we're perfect together. I hate asparagus. You hate asparagus. Okay, it doesn't work. Okay, it's got to be an emotional, and missing the need to fix that once and for all, although you also have to maintain it, is what causes not everybody to bring their innovation game to the enterprise.
And even the term innovation is a bit overplayed, and in some ways, I think irrelevant. You know, it maybe at some time was a good thing to rally the troops, but now I feel like, you know, if you're really in it. And you're really innovating, you're probably not talking about it. You're probably doing it. And it's like people and sex, right? People who are always talking about sex probably
Right,
aren't doing it that much.
right.
And I think that with innovation, you know, at least the way I approached it, to me, it's about defensible growth. You know, those are not sexy words, but I want something. It doesn't have to be innovative. I just want to know that it's going to grow, and if I put it out into the marketplace, I can offer something that others can't for an extended period of time. So to me, that's how I view innovations, in a much more tangible but less sexy way.
Well, I agree with you. I think if we're talking at an enterprise level, innovation isn't an idea. Innovation is a process, it's a machine, it's a company-wide commitment. The idea may be very sexy, and that's what goes directly to the customer in the world. But what had to back that up, and how tightly the company had to be controlled in some cases, including innovating new ways to do that, to manage the supply chain, to do all the kinds of things that make innovation a feasible process, that's where the sex is there. I mean, it's not in the, you know, here we go with a groovy new ad campaign. That's not it.
Yeah.
And so that may be part of the problem too, is that the credit is not given to people who enable innovation to happen in an enterprise. It's the grunt work, and it's not sexy, and it's not exciting to people who are just tilted toward innovation. It's very exciting if you love that sort of thing. I mean, it's a fetish all by itself, you know. There are special outfits if you're just like a control freak, you know?
Elastic ones, or
Elastic ones, and
yeah.
sometimes they're built not to give. Listen, we probably don't have time for that, but
No.
but it's that recognizing that the actual idea may be the end product of a lot of innovation in very small but significant ways throughout the enterprise. And I think maybe that's part of the problem, is those people don't get the glory. They're kind of considered, you know, the lower levels, and then the people with the big ideas. Those big ideas would never get developed if it wasn't for people who knew how to work the darkroom.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that I always made a point of doing is giving credit to people who played some sort of role in whatever new process we implemented. You know, whether it's, you know, the technical people that helped do the, you know, technology audit so we can sign the partnership deal with the external provider. Like, you know, credit is divisible. You know, so you can share it with an infinite number of people, and I think that's something that definitely helps people who are typically so deep in the trenches they never see the light, and it helps them, you know, get up the next day and keep doing more for you than they would for the other guy who's also asking them for the same kind of thing.
I think you're right. I think that the person who suggested or came up with the innovative idea in the first place, once they've done that, they're probably the least significant person in the entire process. I mean, their only significance would be to course correct it if it's going in a direction they didn't intend. But at that point, they're handing it off, and the rest of the team that never gets the credit for innovation is driving it over the line.
So you know, there are some organizations that are at their core innovative, and you know, whether it's a cultural point of origin, like in Google, you know, where they just are constantly throwing stuff out there. Look at the platform we're using right now. They're always innovating, but you know, it's also much easier to innovate in digital. It's much harder when you have to ship things and build huge factories. So those are much bigger capital decisions. You can't just slap a beta sticker on it and throw it out there.
Right.
So, you know, what I find though, for those legacy type businesses that didn't grow up with innovation, my observation's been that the thing that makes them change is necessity, and that usually means, you know, some sort of near bankruptcy, some kind of near failure of a division, some major catastrophic event. opportunistic innovation is something they're okay saying no to. And I think part of it is human psychology, part of it is that self-selection we talked about. But how do you overcome that? How do you get the opportunistic, trigger those opportunistic senses to get the same reaction that the horror of failure of a company would create? So it's very hard to put those two on par, and oftentimes people say, it's sort of like losing $1 million, excuse me, winning $1 million or losing $10,000. So if someone said, look, you have a 50-50 chance of making $1 million, but you have to put up $10,000 to do it. Most people are so risk averse, they'd rather not put up the money because they're just not wired that way. Risk is a much bigger component of their psyche than reward. So how do you address that, and what are the triggers you could use?
Well, if you're saying that essentially the cultures have to decide that it would be a bigger risk not to do this, then I wouldn't make it. Yes, it's true. If the company is fighting for its survival, you may walk into your radio station and find that yesterday we played punk rock, now we're new Christian modern. It's whatever we got to be.
That's right.
But that's very undependable energy in a company to say that if all we're going to do is innovate in reaction to a competitive threat, and there's just so many things wrong with that, including the competition really doesn't control what's most important in your own business. You're your own competition. And that you begin to demonize your competition if the whole focus of the business is to beat another company at their game. You end up on their game, not on your own game.
Yeah.
But so under the heading once again of not soft stuff, there's a couple of issues here. First of all, you have to make it a company worth protecting and worth growing. So there has to be some legitimate, noble purpose attached to the business. Why is this business important, and why the better and the bigger and the more we do of it, the better and bigger it is for the world, or our world, the world that we serve. There has to be something there. It doesn't have to be altruistic. It just has to be a sense of what we do and how we do it and why we do it actually matters. And that's something that once a culture buys off on that and takes some sense of self from that, any change that comes in from the outside, any requirement to innovate, it's a matter of protecting what's important to them, not defending against an attack on what's important to them. So I would say that's first, and second, you just have to make it safe for the culture to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
I was talking to someone from PSFK, and they asked me, it's an innovation consulting firm, and they have a popular blog, and they asked me, well, what what is it that you need to do to get someone to get a company to attract young creative talent? Because all these startups certainly are doing it. They've got some sexy brand, or they're very mobile and social, so people want to be a part of that. So how do you get an old school company? How does an Exxon Mobil get that same kind of vibe? And and my response to it, and I'd be curious to hear your thought. All right, we are standing by. We're going to have to edit this down later. Hopefully Stan will join us shortly.
Hey,
Lost you there for a second.
and I had the
Hello?
most innovative idea. Yeah, I'm here. Are you here?
I can't. You have to set your audio again.
Oh, okay, hang on. That's that's.
Can you
Hold
hear
on.
me?
I can. Hang on a sec.
I can't hear you. You're going to have to
How
check the
about now? How
microphone. Make
about now?
sure that the right one is selected.
Doing that. All right.
Go into the settings and make sure that your headset is the one that's selected for microphone. Just hit the little gear on the upper right-hand side and then go into make sure the headset mic is selected.
We're doing that. So what do you think?
Hit save settings. That mute button and unclick.
I still can't hear you. Let's see. Hold on. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. All right. Did you hit the little gear on the upper
I did.
right-hand side,
I did.
and then in the drop-down, did you select your headset as the source, the microphone source? Try unplugging. Let's do this ghetto style. Why don't we just unplug your headset and replug it back in, see if it recognizes it.
Logitech.
That's speakers.
Oh, okay. Wait, what's this built-in? Click that. See what that top one is. What is that? Nothing.
Nothing. Now?
No? No, nothing. Well, try unplugging your headset. Unplug the
We did.
headset. Let's see
We
if we
did.
can do it without it.
We did that.
I still can't hear you. Crazy. Hold on.
Oh, completely.
Let's see.
You don't not use it at all.
Audio. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, fuck, man. I have no idea.
We'll get off this audio and then put.
Hey, can you hear us? Look at this moving up and down. It's something on his end. No.
All right. Can you guys still hear me?
Now we can hear you, yeah.
Yeah.
Weird, because I'm not hearing anything from you at all. You would think at least your mic would be working from the computer. You sure it is? Well, I can't read the whole thing. I didn't see the last.
Sure, it's us. Maybe it's on your end.
You think it's me, not you?
I don't know.
Okay. This is like a bad breakup. Let's see. Let me look at it. Microphone, camera. I don't see anything here that would be hearing me if mine was set up wrong.
All right.
Let's see. Audio.
Audio.
My volume is up.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh wait,
Just.
now I hear you. I hear you
Oh,
now.
really? Cool.
Yeah, now I hear you.
All right.
Okay.
So
I
you
don't know what
speak.
it. I don't know what just happened. I'm just hoping the whole thing recorded. It says it's
Oh,
recording. Oh, that would be terrible.
that would be terrible. Yeah.
I would be so annoyed. But okay, let's
Okay.
yeah, it says recording and it has end broadcast up here, so I'm hoping that the whole thing went. But all right, let's do this last
Okay.
question and hopefully I'll check on the back end and see if
Yeah.
I get an email from Google saying it's recorded.
All right.
All right, if not,
We'll figure it out.
we'll figure it out. Okay.
We're two innovative guys. We'll figure it
Absolutely.
out. Okay.
We'll find a way to make a time machine and go back and get that audio.
Excellent.
So I don't know if you heard the question, but I think I'll do it from the top anyway. So I was asked, how do you attract young, creative people to your company? Young, passionate people, and that's a challenge for a lot of companies. So if you're not some sexy startup or Google or some other company that's offering free sushi in your cafeteria, the question, or cool projects, how do you do it? And my answer was, it's kind of like dating, right? As a guy, you know that women are attracted to guys with a purpose. You don't necessarily have to be Stan. I'm hoping you join. I don't know if let's see. Okay, there you are.